Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the priest abilities you'll be able to play with in Shadowlands in the alpha. Right now, these abilities are still going through a lot of iteration, and there's quite a bit of changes that are happening. I would say the priests have some of the more interesting class abilities to pick from when in terms of choosing your covenant, because every single one of the ability has pretty big impacts depending on your current playstyle, whether you're looking to heal with Discipline or Holy, or do some damage with Shadow. This is an early alpha, so a lot of changes are going to happen in the future, but I still want to showcase and take a look at all the abilities we have to at least look at and play with right now in the Shadowlands. So let's get into some of the abilities the priests have to play with currently. The first ability is going to be from the Venthyr Covenant, and this one is going to be very interesting, especially if you're expecting to play some Shadow Priest or any Priest in PvP. It's a 45-second CD ability, and what it does is blast the target with a bit of shadow damage. It also disorients the enemy, where the next healing or damage is actually going to have a reverse effect. So if an enemy is attacking you, and you hit them with the Mind Games ability, their next few attacks will heal you up until a certain point. And if the enemy were to, let's say, try to heal an ally like in PvP, they would rather damage that ally also up to a certain point. For Shadow Priest, this ability also generates a little bit extra sanity, so it can be used throughout your rotation. However, if at some point in Shadowlands, priests no longer play with sanity as a mechanic, then disregard this part of the information. I would say this ability is pretty simple. It weaves fairly easily into your playstyle, and obviously has some PvP capabilities. But in terms of this ability and how you would use it in combat, it's quite simple. For a Shadow Priest or a Healer Priest, this is quite a nice hybrid ability with some offensive potential that will also allow you to save a tank in various different ways, especially, let's say, if it's an enemy that does magic damage to your tank. Some of the tanks generally have a hard time mitigating. This ability would be a godsend for them. In PvP, this could also be a nice ability to lock out a healer, preventing them from being able to rescue an ally from a tough situation. So for Priest, it's definitely going to be, especially Shadow, a very interesting ability to use. It's a fairly short cooldown, and it's a very interesting ability overall. It seems simple, but the different things you can do with it, specifically in PvP-ish situations, is something that honestly gets me excited. The second ability you'll be able to play with Venthyr is going to be Doorway to Shadows, which allows you to kind of step forward to a set area and teleport forward, backwards, wherever you want to. For a class that's fairly immobile, for Priest, this could be quite a nice ability to reposition, especially in PvP. So this actually might be quite a useful extra ability for you to pick up in case you go with the Venthyr Covenant. The next covenant on the list is Kyrian with Boon of the Ascended, quite a hefty 3-minute cooldown ability. It kind of makes your priest go into this overdrive mode where upon using the ability Boon of the Ascended, it transforms either your Smite or Mind Flay into a basic single target ability with a 3-second cooldown. While Boon of Ascended becomes this AoE pulsing ability, where you do just a boatload of arcane damage, and for Shadow Priest, the Mind Flay transformed ability will also generate sanity. With this ability, during Boon of Ascended, the more extra abilities that you get from this ability, the AoE pulses as well as single target blasts, it will overcharge this ability with stacks. Upon this ability running out as a buff, it will explode to nearby enemies, doing a load of arcane damage and also a lot of AoE healing. In a sense, it's like a priest's ascendance. You go into this kind of floaty form and just explode with arcane damage, whether frontal to go into a singular enemy or AoE for allies. Also, while you're doing the damage, you're also healing anybody near you as well. So in this ability, you're doing 2 rolls at once, and you try to want to kind of overcharge it until the massive blast at the end. So for a 3-minute cooldown, this ability really does feel quite massive and impactful. This ability right now seems really strong, at least the damage on the alpha right now. And when it comes to group content in particular, this ability can kind of save a priest from a bad situation. Not every single spec in the game is properly balanced. Like Discipline priests have a little bit of healing here and there, but not the strongest in the game right now. So this ability being able to be used as an extra cooldown does get you through some tough situations. So I think that's what this ability is going to be. It's going to be this massive moment of mass healing or mass AoE damage that a priest can use for a hybridized playstyle. Overall, very strong ability with a pretty big playmaking potential, and even though it's simple, I can't say that I hate it. The second ability from the Kyrian Covenant is to summon a steward who will grant you a vial. In this vial you'll be able to heal yourself as well as dispel a variety of effects, everything but magical. Diseases, but also bleeds and curses. So that's going to be very interesting and cool for priests to have, since those are some of the effects that you generally don't have a way to get rid of. Overall, the Covenant for Kyrian is looking kind of decent for priests. Even though simple, it feels quite effective. If you thought the other two abilities were kind of interesting, here's the most complicated ability we could talk about when it comes to priests. And it's called the Fey Blessing. On a 1.5 minute cooldown, your priest is surrounded with helpful sprites, causing your next 10 spells to aid targets of your allies depending on the spells used. And this ability is going to vary whether you're discipline, whether you're holy, or whether you're shadow. So the effects are going to be the same, but which spells trigger which effects is going to be different. So in no particular order, abilities like Shadow Mend and Mind Blast will reduce an ally's damage taken by 10%. Just a random ally in your party will take less damage every time you Mind Blast or Shadow Mend. Ability like Power Word Shield for all specs will invigorate your target with either 2% mana or 20% resources. So a bunch of priests could top off a rogue full of energy in a single Power Word Shield if they decide to coordinate. The massive AoE healing for Disc Priest and Holy, as well as Void Bolt for Shadow Priest, will reduce cooldown of up to 5 allies' major abilities by 3 seconds every time it is cast. So in a sense, this ability is a massive utility attached to every single basic ability you use, whether you try to heal allies or attack your enemies. By yourself, this ability doesn't really feel all that exciting, especially when you're just running through Torghast, but in a group composition, you could definitely utilize this ability in order to power up a bunch of allies. Too bad a lot of the Covenant abilities are still not usable in dungeons, so it's not like you could really test this properly. However, I feel like this ability is one of those few Covenant abilities that seems to be high impact depending on your group composition, and in specific group-oriented combos, you could do quite a lot with this. This is going to be definitely one of those abilities that a priest will want to pick up if they want to raid, whether you're Shadow, Holy, or Discipline, as this gives your party quite a variety of various buffs. It's going to be interesting to see how this ability ends up changing in the future, because from a Shadow Priest perspective, this doesn't seem like something you'll be able to use solo. I mean, I guess the cooldown reduction would be kind of nice, getting sources back could be pretty good, and reducing damage taken by 10% could be quite okay, but it's definitely a group-oriented ability. The second ability you get from joining the Fey Covenant is going to be to soul forge your soul into a fox form, giving you a little bit extra mobility and a short distance teleport from time to time. For a class with no mobility, the fox form is actually quite useful for a priest. Finally, we have probably the most simple yet still effective ability for priests from the Necrolord Covenant. It's called Unholy Nova, and it's on a 1 minute cooldown. It's an explosion that heals allies and debuffs enemies with damage over time. Unholy Transfusion. Your allies that damage the targets that are debuffed are also healed for a little bit. It's kind of like a Paladin's Judgment talent, where upon slamming against an enemy, the Judgment will put a debuff on that enemy, so anybody hitting that enemy will also get a self-heal, but it can be used in AoE situation by any priest. So this gives more of this offensive / healing, helpful, defensive playstyle option that a priest might want to execute inside of a dungeon or a raid group. Overall, I'd say, while a simple ability, it kind of fits into the priest playstyle, and I think Blizzard is really trying to make priests go kind of hybrid-y a little bit. For a Shadow Priest, Holy Priest, or Disc Priest, all you have to do is run into melee in order to be able to get the most value out of this ability, which is kind of a place where some casters might find some danger from time to time. By itself, this ability on a single enemy isn't super insane. However, on a group, it is actually quite good in terms of the damage it can do. The extra healing benefit is actually also quite nice, and I can imagine this ability being quite useful in Mythic Plus dungeons. Imagine your party is trying to get through a very tough trash pack, and that trash pack is giving your party quite a bit of trouble because it does a lot of damage. So as a priest, you could run into this terrible trash pack, debuff them, allowing your allies to just output more damage in order to supplement a little bit extra healing. If anybody remembers Blood Death Knights back in Legion, that's something they actually would use the artifact weapon for. where the artifact weapon upon use would give the party a little bit, or actually quite a lot, extra leech. In a sense, saying, hey, party members, you guys better start pulling your weight, do more damage in order to heal yourselves up. I'm already helping the healer here by giving you guys this buff. So that's kind of what you'll be able to do as a Shadow Priest, Holy Priest, or Discipline Priest. The second ability from the Necrolord Covenant is going to be a small Absorb Shield, and this Absorb Shield grows stronger if you have other enemies around you that are deceased. The stronger those enemies, the better they absorb, and for a class as squishy as Priest, the Absorb Shield is never a bad option. I can't say that I hate a single one of those Priest abilities, although ranking them from best to worst or most favorite to least favorite is definitely difficult, because none of them are really bad. I actually like a lot of them. I think on the number one list, I would probably put the Kyrian ability, because it seems like a very impactful big CD that I could see any type of priest use in order to help out the dungeon group or raid group get through a tough situation. The second ability, while it's not properly working yet, is going to be the Fae ability, just for its capability to help out groups. It seems quite a massive boon for any group content. The third ability I would put on there is going to be Mind Games. I love the PvP capabilities. And at the end, but definitely not least favorite, is going to be the Necrolord ability, which I think is going to be quite a big pickup if you're going to do a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons as a priest. Either way, I would say the Priest Covenant abilities are actually something you need to consider when it comes to choosing them. I don't think with these abilities there's a definitely easy answer. I guess it all depends on what type of gameplay you're trying to get, whether it is raiding or dungeons or PvP. But I would say one thing, priests definitely have a very, very interesting choice ahead of them when it comes to Shadowlands and choosing their covenants, because all the abilities the covenants provide are all quite interesting and have multiple layers to them. So that's going to be super exciting to see who picks what. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts about the different covenant abilities the priests have, which ones were your favorite and least favorite, and let me know all that in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.